Welcome back. Today on Take Care with the Rowing Therapist, I'm joined by James Hiromasa, a nationally recognized expert in self-defense, safety awareness, and tactical training. James is the CEO and co-founder of Colorado Krav Maga, one of the most respected self-defense training centers in the country. For decades, he's trained civilians, law enforcement, and peace officers in personal protection, use of force decision-making, and real-world safety preparedness. He holds multiple third-degree black belts, including in the Israeli self-defense system of Krav Maga, and was among the very first instructors licensed to teach Krav Maga in the United States in 1997 by the Krav Maga Worldwide Association. On an international level, he was awarded senior Krav Maga instructor status by the Wingate Institute in Israel. In addition to his martial arts expertise, James brings extensive experience in SWAT operations, law enforcement training, and tactical response under high-stress conditions. His work focuses not only on physical skills, but on awareness, mindset, and understanding how the human nervous system functions under threat. He's also the author of How to Be a Superhero and The Modern Gunfighter, where he shares practical insights into personal safety, readiness, and empowerment. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So to get us started, I wonder about just telling people, first of all, what makes Krav Maga different from other forms of martial arts?
Sure. Krav Maga as a system, and there are now many flavors of Krav Maga, but as it was originally put forth and designed to be, it is more of a self-defense and fighting system than it is a martial art. And it's that distinction is mostly due to the fact that in society today, for the last maybe 20 to 30 to maybe even 40 years, martial arts, the idea of martial arts has been driven by the media and movies in particular. And also it became quite a popular sport. I mean, Taekwondo became an Olympic sport a while back. And because of that, because of the way it's portrayed in movies and media, and because of the competition factor, um, martial arts became kind of split into three different areas. Still a self-defense and fighting area, but then by and large, most of the commercial martial arts training that you can find nowadays is competition driven, either in children's karate kind of thing, sport, or point fighting, or for adults getting into Olympic sparring for in Taekwondo, or of course in mixed martial arts and grappling and things of that nature, professional fighting. So that's kind of where martial arts is split into three ways. Now, Krav Maga is, we refer to it more of a self-defense and fighting system because it's not really artistic, so to speak. With no other way to describe it as that is, when we think of martial arts, we think of the art form of martial art form, and we think of high kicks and spinning kicks and jumping flying tiger, hidden dragon, walk on the trees kind of stuff. And all of that is fantastic and beautiful and amazing if you can get your body to do those kinds of things. Back when I was young, maybe, but that is an art form, and there's a heavy artistic element to it. Krav Maga is not so. Krav Maga is really just straightforward, kind of down and dirty. There are no rules whatsoever. We encourage you to pick up that fan behind you and smash it over somebody's head if you have to right now. There's no, we understand that if you're trying to do jumping, spinning type of techniques, it doesn't take much for you to lose your balance and be on the ground and have two people kicking you in the head all of a sudden. So it's rooted in just really straightforward, do whatever you need to do to be safe, go straight to the point, go on the attack, and get home safe. That's the idea behind Krav Maga. Now, the system itself is, I guess you could say, it's sort of a mixed martial art in a sense that it's Krav Maga self-defense and fighting. And so when you talk about the fighting element, there are no better punchers in the world than professional boxers. They make millions of dollars punching people, right? Those are the best punches. So you should utilize those in your self-defense, in your fighting, I should say. The kickers, probably the best kickers in the world for fighting are Muay Thai practitioners, and they have fantastic kicks. So for that reason, Krav Maga as a system, the fighting portion of Krav Maga has elements of boxing, has elements of Muay Thai kickboxing. It has elements of Jiu-Jitsu because it's very well known and popular, and it's a great system now. It has old elements of Judo from the founder originally, but and it has, if I said boxing, and also wrestling. So if you want to be a great fighter, we would find you four coaches. We would find you a boxing coach, a Muay Thai coach, a Jiu-Jitsu coach, and a wrestling coach. And we would train you specifically in those fighting skills and send you out into the ring or into the cage to challenge yourself and opponents and try your hand at fighting. And then Krav Maga has a element of self-defense only. And what most people kind of get wrong is that self-defense and fighting are truly two different things. Most people assume that if you are a good fighter, you're good at self-defense. And that's simply not true. Some of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound, I could never hope to beat these guys. Some of them are terrible at self-defense. I mean, they're fantastic fighters, mind you, but they're terrible at self-defense. Conversely, if you want to be good or great at self-defense, you also have to have some skill in fighting. You truly do. But self-defense is what happens before you get to the fight. And I love that you were talking about, situational awareness and all of that, because truly that's where self-defense begins. But it's not just the mental aspect of being aware and avoiding violence. It's the application of self-defense. I'll give you an example. If somebody is pointing a gun at my face, I think this would be a terrible time to kick them in the groin. Do you agree? Yeah,
Yes.
right. And kicking somebody is a fighting skill. Kicking in the groin would be considered cheating in many organized sports. But if somebody's pointing a gun at my face, if you kick them in the groin, you're just going to get your face shot. The same thing is true if somebody is holding a knife to your neck. It's probably not a good idea to start struggling against them until you solve that problem. Until you solve that problem. So solving that problem is self-defense. And then hopefully you get to a point that you can fight, that you're able to fight. So that's self-defense in fighting. That's the way Krav Maga approaches it and looks at it. Self-defense is what you have to do when a threat or an attack is already presented itself, and you need to better your position and protect yourself from that immediate action, and then hopefully get to the point that you can fight your way out and go home safe. That's, in a nutshell, Krav Maga as a system.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. What first drew you into the world of Krav Maga?
Actually, pretty much exactly what I said. I started in martial arts when I was 9 years old. I started in judo on a small town on the Big Island of Hawaii called Honokaa, and there was a judo program at the Japanese temple there at the Hongwanji, and my parents put me in it at 9 years old, probably because they realized that I wasn't that smart and my mouth would go before my brain half the time, and so I needed to learn how to defend myself. And I just fell in love with martial arts. And since 9 years old, I've been training, and I've really never stopped training all through my childhood, my teen years, even my early adult years. I always trained in some kind of martial art. And when I graduated high school, I moved to Oahu, to Manoa. I went to school at UH Manoa, decided to go to college. And while I was going to college, I got a job running nightclubs for a living. This is back in the 80s. I'm dating myself, but it was back in the 80s. Nightclubs were very popular, right? Dance clubs. I mean, everybody remembers A Night at the Roxbury and all of that good, and all that good stuff. Yeah, that was me, right? So I had a lot more hair back then. But the uh, the thing I quickly found out. By the way, I wasn't security. I wasn't a bouncer or anything like that in the nightclubs. I was on the entertainment side. I was a disc jockey. I was a concert promoter, concert engineer, management in the clubs. And but what I quickly found out is that, in altercations, because there are always altercations, always fights in the nightclubs. You just get a bunch of people together and you add beer, and there's going to be fights. That's just all there is to it. So there are always altercations going on in the clubs. And I always kind of found myself in the middle of it, mostly probably by choice, because as I mentioned, I wasn't that smart growing up. And I always wanted to test my skill, but also because as management, if our security guys kicked somebody out of the club and 86 them, then it always took a manager to come out, and in front of the police officers that showed up, you had to say, okay, you're 86 from the club, you can't come back for 6 months, or you're 86 for life, whatever it is. And these guys that you kick out of the clubs, they look around and they see all of our 300-pound security guys, and they want to fight with somebody, so they choose me, right? Because 5'7", 100 and probably 67 pounds was my fighting weight back then. So and of course I wouldn't turn down a fight, because I wasn't that smart. But what I quickly learned, Danielle, was that um, a lot of the things that I knew about fighting from training in martial arts for all those years, they all apply great in the fight. But every once in a while, there would be a situation or something would happen where I didn't have a response for it, and I couldn't even get to the fight. And I'll give you the perfect example, of a real life example. I was in the back sports bar area of one of the nightclubs that I was running, and there was an altercation. There was a fight going on, and I got in the middle of it. And this big guy reaches over another guy and grabs me by the hair and starts punching me in the head. Now, I had a lot of hair, as I mentioned, so it was a good handle for him.
Hmm.
But I'm okay getting punched in the head. I can block. I can roll with the punches. I was avoiding damage, but this guy's arms were so long I couldn't even reach him to fight him. Right. So this is the way we approached self-defense training back then, is we would identify an attack or something that we didn't understand and how to get out of, and we would find an instructor or a system that had an answer for that particular attack, and we would go train with them. Right, we would collect self-defense techniques, and over the decades I collected hundreds of self-defense techniques from probably a dozen different martial arts systems, because every time I came across something in the nightclub that I didn't have a response for, I didn't have an answer for, I couldn't get out of. I'm very sorry about that.
No
Um,
worries.
I couldn't get out of. I I would find a new system or a new instructor, and I would say, hey, listen, this is how I was grabbed, held, attacked, whatever. Do you have an answer or a technique to get out of that? And if they said yes, I would go train with them, right? So I collected hundreds and hundreds of self-defense techniques. Well, I quickly found out, and actually this was interesting. It was another true story. It was a night I was walking down the street with a buddy to go to a bank machine, because we were gonna go have a few drinks in Kailua of Oahu, and then we were gonna go to Waikiki to go clubbing because it was our day off. And I ended up, long story short, I ended up being confronted by a guy with a knife on the sidewalk, and my buddy took off running. A couple of his friends chased him. It was just me and this kid with the knife. And I was standing there looking at this kid with the knife, and he's telling me that he was gonna effing kill me. And I recall going through my head on all the self defense techniques that I had, all the knife defense techniques that I had. Right, I had dozens of knife defense techniques, and I'm going through my head, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this kid's 6 feet away. He's 6 feet away from me. He's gonna take one. If he takes one step in, I'm gonna start with a kick, because I'm really good at kicking people. Right, I won a lot of trophies because I kick people well. I'm really good at kicking people. So I'm thinking in my head, okay, he takes one more step, I'm going to kick him. And then this nagging part of my brain all of a sudden pops up and says, and says to my training side of my brain, says, yeah, kick him. That's a good idea. But then what? And I'm sitting there arguing with myself. What do you mean, then what? I'm going to kick him. And this little part of my brain said, yeah, but you've kicked, like, I don't know, a couple hundred people, and not once have they ever just fallen down from one kick or ran away. Right? It's always just been part of a fight. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, that's a good point, brain. Um, so after I kick him, I'm gonna have to, clearly I'm gonna have to make a knife defense, because he's got a big old kitchen knife in his hand. And my brain goes, that's awesome. Knife defenses. We've been training for this moment. Let's do it. Which knife defense are you going to do? And I'm sitting there running through my mental Rolodex of probably 3 dozen knife defenses. And I suddenly realized, Daniel, that night, say like 11 o'clock at night, standing on Oneava Street in Kailua, I suddenly realized that all the self-defense techniques that I collected, particularly weapons defenses and knife defenses, I always knew exactly what the attack was going to be before practicing the defense. So
Mm.
every time, for decades, we trained in knife defenses, and it was, it was like this. It was okay. I'm gonna stab you like this, right? And then I would say, okay, I'm gonna get ready, get in my stance, and they would stab me exactly like the way they showed me, and I would be successful in my defense. It'd be awesome. And that night, standing in front of that kid, I realized that I had no idea how he was going to try to stab me. I had no clue. The knife was kind of stuck behind his leg. I could see the handle of it sticking out of his hand. But I'm like, okay, is he going to shank me from below? Is he going to try to poke me with it? Is he going to slash me with it? Is he going to stab me? I had no clue. And I realized that by the time I figured it out, I was going to be too late. Right? But by the time I recognized and came up with a knife defense that I had trained in before in my mental Rolodex and deployed it, he'd probably be on his fourth stab. And that night for me was an epiphany that collecting self-defense techniques and training them in the way that we did in preset movements with predetermined attacks was not the answer. Now, this is in the late 90s. So, or no, actually, this was probably early mid 90s. And, Krav Maga, nobody heard of Krav Maga. I hadn't heard of Krav Maga. Krav Maga wasn't even a thing until really 1997 in Los Angeles. And but that night, after that, I survived. I didn't get stabbed. Uh, but
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, I'm still here. But I was actually saved by like the only police officer on duty that night drove down the street while I was sitting there drooling, thinking of what I was going to do. And the police officer stopped,
Wow.
and the kid threw the knife and ran away. And he got arrested. He had a warrant for stabbing somebody previously, so he was definitely going to try to kill me.
Oh, wow.
But the point is that since that night, I started kind of going on this quest to find. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew it wasn't more self defense techniques, right? I didn't even have the question, so I couldn't search for the answer. I just knew something was wrong. I had at that point trained. I trained. I was teaching at that point. I was teaching law enforcement officers. I was teaching security officers. I was training with guys from the military bases. We were doing a lot of reality based type training, but it was always with weapons. Military law enforcement. It was always with weapons and always those kinds of scenarios. And then it was always predetermined when it came to self defense, and just nobody had the answer. And flash forward, I moved to Colorado and I'm still teaching martial arts. And I get this advertisement from, as you said, Krav Maga Worldwide in Los Angeles. And they're looking for martial artists that teach in a martial arts school already to learn and get certified in the system of Krav Maga for self-defense for adults. And this is in the late 90s. Most martial arts schools were very child driven, karate for kids kind of thing. And um, they wanted people that had a place to teach already to learn the system and bring it back to their martial arts school. Not necessarily open Krav Maga schools, but bring the system of Krav Maga self-defense for adults in particular back to their martial arts schools. And I applied to go to the very first instructor certification. And when I got there, I mean, long process and interview and all that stuff, but I was in the very first instructor certification. And while there, they started introducing principles of self-defense instead of techniques. Now, of course, there's techniques, but everything was based more on principles than on techniques. And most importantly, most of the things were based closely on your body's instinctive reaction to pain or to threat, a sudden threat or appearance of a like if somebody were to throw a rock at your head, you would do this, right? Your hands would come up, your head would shrink down, you make a
Hmm.
funny face. It's the mammalian startle reflex. And the defenses are built on that. If you find yourself choking out of the blue, your hands will naturally go to your neck. They won't go somewhere else first. Those are examples of instinctive reactions. Well, Krav Maga takes those instinctive reactions, modifies them just enough so that they're still close to being instinctive, but that they can make a significant defense in the moment. And I'll be the first to tell you and admit that there are some better defenses against some of the attacks than what we have in Krav Maga. There truly are. If you have time to train for 5 to 10 years and 3 times a week and put in thousands and thousands of hours in learning a single defense, there are better defenses than we have against some of the attacks. However, I can also tell you, and it's been proven time and time again scientifically, that under high stress situations, that training isn't going to come out of you first when you're caught by surprise. You need a warning for that, right? A professional athlete goes into a basketball or football game knowing they're about to play that game. right? They're not yanked out of their dinner chair with their family at a restaurant and suddenly throwing a football and saying, "Go score a touchdown," right? They're prepared for that battle, so to speak. Military, they
Mm.
prepare when for a mission by training for that specific mission. So it's easier to have trained reactions when you have a little bit of warning that something is about to happen. But what about that surprise attack that you're not expecting? Then what? And that's when Krav Maga actually shines better than those techniques that are actually better than Krav Maga. Because what flies out of you, your instinctive reaction is turned into a adequate self-defense with a simultaneous counterattack. And now you have a moment to think about your situation, come up with your plan, get into your fights and all that good stuff. That's how I got into it. There was something greatly missing in my training, and I knew it was the reality portion of it wasn't there. And I didn't know what. And it turns out that it's instinctive reactions and it's a principle based approach with less techniques, not more techniques. If we could make Krav Maga as a system wax on and wax off work for every attack, we would do so. You only have two options, so it's much easier to choose from two options than 100. That's how I got there.
Okay. Yeah. You talk a lot about awareness as a foundation of safety. I know you even offer courses on helping people understand how to read body language and recognize threat. Um, what do you feel people most misunderstand about personal safety?
I think most people misunderstand themselves in personal safety
Mm.
to begin with. The number one issue that we have when talking to people about personal safety and self defense is overcoming their overconfidence bias, so to speak. Most people just kind of naturally think, and this is it's a human thing, right? We all think we're better than we are at something. If I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at playing the drums? However good you are, Daniel, you probably add 1 point to that, right? We just think we're a little bit better. Um, it's most people kind of think that they'll rise to the occasion. And I'll give you another example.
Uh,
I ask this question a lot when I'm teaching seminars, especially when I'm teaching groups, moms groups. I love asking this question too, but really any groups with people that are likely to be parents. I ask them. I said, listen, if you're on the playground and your 2-year-old child is playing around in the sandbox and on the jungle gym, and you're watching your kid play, and your phone dings and you look at it and you answer a quick text and you look up and you don't see your kid there anymore, but you see some guy that you don't know about 30 feet away running in the opposite direction with your child under their arm, what are you going to do next? And universally, the answer is, I'm going to chase that fool down, right? Uh, I'm
mhm.
not sure what the bleeping ability is in this, so I'll keep it clean. But I'm going to chase I'm going to chase that person down. And then my next question is, of course you are. They have your kid. What are you going to do when you get there? And usually the answer is something like, I'm going to rip his head off. So my next question is, that's awesome. How many heads have you ripped off in your life? Right? It's like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, how much fight training have you had in your life? How good of a fighter are you? Well, I don't have any fight training, but I'm going to rip his head off. Well, how? How are you going to accomplish that when that person has probably been in a lot more fights in life than you have? How are you going to accomplish that goal? I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to grab your child and play tug of war with your child because that's the most important thing to you in the world. And so that's what you're instinctively going to grab and pull on. You're not going to suddenly turn into a UFC middleweight champion. You're going to play tug of war with some dude trying to kidnap your child. Period. End of story. So that's what most people misunderstand, that you're not going to rise to the occasion. There's a saying by a Greek poet and warrior that goes, you won't rise to the level of your expectations. You'll fall to the level of your training. A lot of people have heard that quote.
Yeah.
Some people mislabel that quote as being from a Navy SEAL, but it's actually from way, way, way before that. And that's absolutely true. We all think we're going to be better than we are. And that's in the self-defense part, right, Danielle? The self-protection part. The
Mhm.
Even before that, most people think that they're going to recognize a threat and avoid it naturally. You talked about situational awareness and we've been talking about body language. And honestly, those are two really good courses to go well together because body language will cue you to be situationally aware and unless you're oblivious
Mm.
to it. right? Unless you're focused on something else deeply, you won't rise to that occasion. Also, most people think that when they're walking down the street and a piano falls out of a building because a coyote is trying to smash a road runner or whatever the case is, you're not going to hear the piano. You're not going to step out of the way. You won't even know it. You'll get smushed by the piano, right? You can't walk around paranoid, always looking above you to see if something's falling out of a skyscraper. But the bottom line is situational awareness is not natural. It is not instinctive, uh, and it doesn't happen when you're not ready for it. Situational awareness is actually a learned thing that must be trained, not a lot, but a little bit. And if you're interested, I'll tell you how to do it in just a few minutes here. It
Yeah, that'd be
has to be
great.
trained just a little bit. And more importantly, you have to understand that your subconscious brain, your sympathetic nervous system, is a highly tuned machine that is doing nothing else than trying to keep you alive all day long, all night long. It's always searching for threats. The problem is, especially in our modern society, is we don't always listen to those little subconscious cues right away. We want to finish that round of Candy Crush before we look up, right? We're not sure what our subconscious brain is telling us. Back when we were mammals living in caves and fighting saber-toothed tigers, we were highly tuned to that stuff. If our subconscious brain sensed danger, we stopped, we'd freeze. We'd freeze and we'd try to identify where the danger is. We'd hold our breath and try not to be seen by a predator. We don't do that necessarily anymore unless it's overt. So situational awareness requires a little bit of training and understanding that your subconscious brain is constantly sending information to your conscious brain in forms of, I call them red flags or pings, like a sonar ping, right? You get a ping and do you pay attention to that ping? Do you listen to it? And when
Mm-hmm.
you get that feeling, you need to stop what you're doing, look around and listen and try to identify what that problem is. Situational awareness, most people define it and heard it defined as something like this. And tell me if you've heard situational awareness kind of defined like this at some point. Situational awareness, they say it's paying attention to your surroundings while you're doing other things, keeping your head on a swivel, watch your environment,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings
Yeah.
human beings cannot multitask. We switch tasks. We don't multitask. So if you're
Right.
focused on one thing, you'll only be focused on that one thing. And
Right.
in order for you to focus on something else, you have to be told or you have to choose to focus on something else. So if you're reading a book and your phone buzzes, that's an indicator that you're going to now change what you're doing and switch task, right? You're going to go look at your phone. You're not going to keep reading and look at your phone at the same time. You can't do it. You can't read both things at the same time. So you're going to consciously choose to do that. Situational awareness, we define it as, we came up with this whole program. We define situational awareness as consciously and purposefully switch tasking. Do it consciously and do it purposefully. And I'll show you how to do it right now if you want. Is that a window? Is that a
Yes.
window to your right?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Okay, don't look at it right now, but is it open? Can you see outside?
The not
Not
really.
really.
The blinds are closed, so it would be too
Okay,
bright in
okay,
here.
no worries. Do you have something on your left? Don't look. I just want to know what's on your left.
Okay.
What in the room is on your
Um,
left? Is it a door? Is it a bookshelf?
yeah, I have a
Okay,
door
I'm
to
gonna
the
I'm
left.
gonna give you 2 seconds. When I say go, I want you to look to the left, and then I'll say look at me again. I'm gonna give you 2 seconds. Ready? Go. Okay, look at me. Please tell me what you saw.
I saw the door and the knob
Okay,
and the
all right.
brain
Okay,
texture.
I'm gonna give you another 2 seconds. Let's try again. Ready? Go. Go.
Okay.
Okay, look at me. I'm not going to ask you what you saw, but I'm going to ask you this question. Did you now just consciously identify many more objects in that direction than the first time?
Yes.
There you go. Why? Because I implied that you didn't see something, right? It was
Yes.
an implication.
Absolutely.
That's your subconscious. I am your subconscious brain, Danielle. I'm your subconscious, and I'm telling you,
Oh,
you missed something, right? So
yeah.
that second time you consciously and purposefully switch tasked. You made it a point to identify more things because you felt like you didn't do it
Yeah.
right the first time. That's situational awareness. You can't do that all day long. It's exhausting. It's called paranoia, right? But what you can do is you can learn to trust your subconscious brain. And when you get a subconscious ping from your subconscious brain to your conscious brain, trying to warn you of something, anything, you just get a feeling. I just got a feeling that something's off. Stop, consciously and purposefully switch task, and try to figure out what it is in your environment that is giving you that feeling. Because your peripheral vision, your hearing, your smell, your tactile sensation on your skin, all of that picked something up that could be a threat to you. And your subconscious brain is trying to warn you. But it's not smart enough to tell you what that threat is. I'll, I guarantee anybody listening to this, I guarantee everyone that's listening to this at some point in time is woken up in the middle of the night because they thought they heard a noise. Yes? And you
Mhm.
probably did something like this. You were sleeping and you did this, right? You open your mouth, you open your eyes, and you
Yep.
froze and you waited. You didn't jump out of bed.
Mhm.
You didn't run and get a baseball bat. You froze and you waited. And that's because when you're sleeping, your subconscious brain is still trying to keep you alive. So it's listening for possible threats. It's listening and sensing smell, and it's doing all these things to protect you while you're sleeping. And then when it hears something, it shouts at your conscious brain, says, "Yo, yo, wake up, we heard something." And you wake up and you go, what was it? And it goes, "I don't know, you figure that out." Right? It's not that smart. It can tell you that there might be danger around. It's never going to lie to you. It might be wrong. It might be your ice machine dropping ice in your freezer. But you have to consciously identify what that threat is before you can take any kind of action. If it's your ice machine, you're going back to sleep. If it's an unknown voice in your kitchen, you're grabbing your baseball bat or dialing 911 or whatever it is that you do for self protection in your home, right? But you can't make that decision until you've consciously identified the threat. That's the same thing as walking down the street. You ever get a feeling that it's just not kosher to walk past that door? Right? Do you ever get a feeling like that group of people,
Mhm.
I don't feel right walking near that group of people for some reason? These feelings, again, they might be wrong, but they're never going to lie to you. And they're all based on your instinct, in your DNA, and in your totality of learned circumstances and experiences, including what you watched on TV and movies your whole life, right? So if you get a bad feeling, there's probably something about that situation, that door, that group of people, or that person even that you just met. There's something about them or it that reminds you of a time that was very dangerous or that hurt you in the past. And your subconscious brain is saying, I see that again. I don't feel good about that door, right? It just could be as simple as that door looked like a door to a bad house in your neighborhood when you were 7. I don't know. But you have to listen to those things, try to identify what's giving you that feeling, and then take appropriate action based on that, which maybe it's fine and walk past the door, right? It may be fine. But you have to listen to that. That's situational awareness. And for everybody listening, actually, I'll give you a couple of pointers on other times to do it. Whenever you walk out of your house, don't just open your door and walk out. I do this religiously. I open my door, I walk out of my front door, I step to the side, and I just for 1 second, not any longer that, 1 second, I just look around. I just look around. I don't expect somebody to jump out from behind a bush. That's not it. It reminds me in the morning to consciously and purposely switch task when I need to. So I do it when I change
Mm.
my location out of my house into a store,
Okay.
into a parking lot. When I park my vehicle before I get out, I just stop and I just take it all in. I'm not looking for threats. That's paranoia. What I'm doing is I'm giving
Mhm.
my subconscious brain a chance to warn me if there's something I don't see. Because I can't, most people think that being an expert at this is identifying what threats look like. Really, being an expert at this is identifying what your brain says when it detects a threat subconsciously. And I just give my subconscious brain a moment to do that. And if I feel something, then I'll pay more attention to that parking lot and try to figure out why I'm getting that feeling. I give your brain the chance to do its job, and then
Mhm.
consciously and purposely switch task when you get that feeling.
Wow. Okay. It sounds like a mindful
Sorry,
moment, like practicing
yeah, that was
mindfulness.
a lot. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's good stuff. In fact, I'm curious about any other habits that you have, like, for example, going to a restaurant, and any tips that you use to keep yourself safe there.
Yeah, for sure. So Usually when I walk into a restaurant, pardon me, you can tell I've been talking a lot. Usually when I walk into a
Yeah.
restaurant, I do the same thing as when I walk out my door. I get into the restaurant, I step to the side, and I just take in the environment first. And again, I'm not looking, scanning, looking for threats. That's not what I'm doing. I'm literally with my wife and my kids and my grandkids and my friends or whatever we're doing out to have a good time. I'm just giving my subconscious brain a moment to warn me if something is amiss. I just trust my subconscious brain more than I trust my ability to see the bulge under somebody's shirt standing at the bar on his phone. You know what I mean? I trust my subconscious brain to pick those things up much faster. Otherwise, it would take me an hour to get to my table and order my beer. That's not acceptable. So so that's one of the things I do, and it's worked a number of times. I've called out people to I people to look out for. I was with a group of friends and my wife one night, and uh, uh, we were doing that. We went into a lounge to have a cocktail, and I just kind of took in the environment. It was very busy, and I just leaned over to my wife and I said, "The guy with the blue shirt at the bar, we need to keep an eye on him." And she passed it down to all of our friends, and they're all, like half of them are cops, and the other half are fighters, so we're probably good to go. But they passed down the info, and then of course the question comes, why? And my answer to my wife was, I don't know. I don't know. It just something about him. I don't know what it is. When I analyze that later, I don't think it was the guy with the blue shirt at the bar that gave me the feeling. I think it was the few people around him at the bar and their body language trying to exclude him or being uncomfortable being near him is probably what cued me off my subconscious brain. But I didn't ask questions. I just trust my subconscious brain, and I just warned my party. Of course, believe it or not, the guy in the blue shirt showed up at our table not 10 minutes later. It's trying to start a conversation with our group. Out of everybody, out of the 130 people in this lounge, shows up right at our table and
Wow.
brings up conversation. And there was no tense situation. I actually told my wife, I said, I don't know, but I give him about 10 minutes, and he's either going to be in a fight or he's going to be buying everybody drinks. I'm not sure which one. And sure enough, he shows up at our table. I diffused the situation quite easily, and he wanted to buy us all drinks, right? So I told my wife, I go, check the time. Was that 10 minutes? That's pretty good, right? Yeah, so that's a good one. And the other thing I do, Danielle, this is really important to me and my family. The other thing we do is when we go into, especially a new venue, um, we get our table, whatever we're doing, get our seats. But then I always, from where we're sitting, I excuse myself to go to the restroom. But before I go to the restroom, I walk to the nearest alternate exit and I touch the door or the window. I walk there and I touch it if I can, unless there's somebody sitting at the window in a booth. I'm not going to join them for dinner and touch the window. But most of the time, it's an alternate exit, an emergency exit. I'll walk there and I'll touch the door because I know that if something really bad happens and panic sets in everybody, again, I won't rise to the level of my expectations. I will only do what I always do, and we'll only run to where we were last safe, and that's the front door, right? And that's why people perish in these fires and these events all the time because they run back to the door that they came in instead of using an alternate exit. Because in that scary high stress moment where cortisol and adrenaline is just peaking in your bloodstream, your reptilian brain takes over. Your
Hmm.
defined critical thinking brain takes a backseat to the survival brain, and it just says run. And you go, where? And it goes, well, I don't know. So just go back to how you came in, and that's where you run to. So by
Yeah.
walking to and touching an alternate exit, you literally buy yourself about a 50-50 chance of using one or the other door in an emergency in that fight or flight moment. If you have 4 to 10 seconds to come up with a plan later, maybe you'll choose that door afterwards. But as the smoke is filling the room and you're starting to choke more and more, you never come down from that cortisol and adrenaline hit. You don't come down off of that as the threat increases. So you may not ever reach the point that you can use critical thinking. And so you have to
Yeah.
trust what you've practiced and your situational awareness and your alternate plans. And the best way to do that is physically do it.
Yeah. Excellent point. Um, how does our body respond under threat? And why does the preparation help us stay calmer in those moments? I mean, you did just explain a lot of
Yeah,
that. I mean, fair
yeah.
enough,
No,
right? But I'm just curious about what that preparation does to help make the
I'll tell.
difference.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure it helps us stay calm. what it helps us do is it helps us access training with confidence, right? If we
Hmm.
train under those conditions, then we have a better chance of responding under those conditions. So let's go back to the martial arts, and why Krav Maga is different.
Hmm.
If all you do is train self-defensive fighting in a room with matted floors and good lighting and a water fountain and air conditioning and all of the nice music playing in the background, if that's all you do, you're probably not going to access your training very quickly when you're walking down Colfax and somebody pops out from behind a building with a knife and starts chasing you, right? It's going to be different. um, but if you, in your training, if you occasionally get out of that training room and you go into the parking lot and you do it at night and you play loud, cranky music, or you have horns or sirens blaring, and you have people running around and screaming, and then you do the techniques that you're practicing under those conditions, then your subconscious brain gets that backdrop and says, "Oh, I know what this looks like, and I've done it before." For instance, I'm the defensive tactics trainer for a large hospital and paramedics organization in Denver, and they do paramedics academies, and I'm their defensive tactics instructor for their academy, and self defense instructor. Paramedics need self defense. They're often assaulted, so when they come and to do their DTAC training, I require them to bring an ambulance with them. And once I'm done teaching them a bunch of stuff, we take a break and then we go out and we do all the same stuff in and around the ambulance. Not because there's special techniques inside of an ambulance. It's because I want the subconscious backdrop of their ambulance in their brain so that if they ever have to defend themselves for real, they've already seen it, albeit under a lower stress situation. And of course, we always try to induce stress. Stress inoculation training is huge, but the
Mm.
backdrop is important. We call it scenario training, and most people don't understand how special and how important scenario training is, because it's not just trying to see every scenario that you might come up with and make a choice. It's to feed your subconscious brain the backdrop of what it might be when you have to perform those techniques. That's super important. So when you say, training to prepare for this and to remain calm, I'm not sure it's a calmness under fire so much as you've seen it before, you've done it under stress, you trust what you're about to do, and you're just going to get it done without overthinking it. And you know your reactions, you're confident in your reactions initially. A lack of confidence can cause many problems, including an excessive use of force, which is super important to
Oh.
remember. When you don't have confidence in your own ability, you tend to use too much force. And this goes true for civilians, law enforcement, and first responders across the board. Training is imperative to be able to trust your training and be able to turn it off as soon as that threat is eliminated. So by doing stress inoculation training and scenario training, it helps build that picture of what it might really look like in real life. And now you're reacting the way you trained, hopefully with an element of instinctive reaction to it. And you're trusting your abilities in the moment. You have to give yourself, again, 4 to 10 seconds to really get a handle of what's going on here. And those 4 to 10 seconds can be life or death. Uh, a, a,
Wow.
a person can produce, if somebody has a handgun in their hand, by their leg, in their vehicle, they can produce that gun and fire one round center mass out their window in about 0.28 seconds, a little over a quarter of a second, 0.25 to 0.28 seconds. That's very fast. The human brain won't even recognize that threat for about 0.35 seconds. So you're about zero point 0.1
Wow.
seconds behind the curve when that happens, if that ever happens. And the same thing is true with producing a knife that's already in your hand and stabbing. That stab can happen at approximately 3 stabs per second, about zero point 0.3 seconds. Three
Wow.
stabs per second. And again, it's going to take you about 0.35 seconds to recognize that threat. So whatever you do instinctively better work, and you better use good tactics and leave yourself a reactionary gap between people, especially when you get a bad feeling. Leave yourself a reactionary gap to cause them to have to take a step to attack you, which gives you more time for your reaction. You have to multiply their 0.25 to their 0.35 action time, you have to make that longer because we know our brain isn't going to react that quickly. So we have to use tactics to give us that advantage. Again, true for civilian and law enforcement altogether. It's a reactionary gap. It's 2 arms length away. If we both put our arms out, fingertips to fingertips, that's your average reactionary gap. That means somebody needs to take a step forward to stab you, punch you, kick you. They can't reach you from 2 arms length away. They have to take at least one step. That gives you some time to react. Your peripheral vision works great for you at that distance, and your instinctive reactions will have time to develop.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, so, with all the training you've done with civilians, law enforcement, peace officers, anything you notice that shifts in how they carry themselves with confidence from training?
Yes, I can't even begin to tell you. Yes, it's um there's there's two kinds of confidence. There's confidence in your with skills to back it, and then there's overconfidence. And overconfidence is dangerous.
Mm,
Overconfidence is dangerous
yeah.
because you will allow yourself to be put in situations that you're not prepared for. And now, oftentimes, overconfidence in first responders can take on the form of command presence, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, nobody, if you have a larger than life command presence and a little bit of overconfidence, those things will kind of multiply. And, bad guy would be like, maybe I'm not going to F with this guy, right? Um, that might be okay. But when you have true confidence and you do have skills to back it, you you tend to there's no other way to describe it except that you smell like it. It's
Mm,
you it's not an actual smell, but it's something about our body language that tells another human being that this person is not to be messed with. And it's regardless of size, stature, demeanor, any of that. It's just something that we exude, and it's very hard to put your
yeah.
finger on. Um, and when you have that, you know, there's some funny old school martial arts movies. They used to call it the glow, right? But when you have, it's a real thing, not the glow, but it's a real thing. When you have that,
Yeah.
people tend to not want to choose you as the victim. They'll move on for
Right.
civilians or first responders. I was walking through Vegas of all places with a friend, another Krav Maga instructor of ours, and we're in Vegas for a martial arts and Krav Maga training and symposium. And I think I was teaching a knife defense seminar that weekend, and we were walking up the stairs to one of those overpasses that goes over the strip. And there was a guy at the top of the stairs. They're really tall, a lot of stairs, those things are, because they're really high over the strip. And there was a guy at the top of the stairs that was just aggressively panhandling and just getting in everybody's face as they went up these stairs. And so, my friend and I look at each other and nonverbal communication. We know we're going to separate a little bit and flank and do the whole thing. And we pause, we slow down to let people in front of us give us more space before we get there. And as we approach the top of the stairs, he looks at us. He looks at us and he raises a finger. And he goes, "You are not to be trifled with," and turned around and walked away.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
after accosting everybody, right? And I'm not gonna lie, part of me was a little disappointed, but 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 the point is what is it? It's like I don't think that guy, especially in his state of mind, could have articulated on paper or in a report that, well, these two guys, I noticed that they were walking together and they separated a little bit to give themselves space, and they paused and slowed down to let the people in front of them go a little bit further to give them some space and slow down the group behind them. And it felt like it was a tactical decision that they made. And then the way that they carried themselves with their chins down but their shoulders up and walking very straight and very careful with their steps going up the stairs and moving with intention told me that these guys knew what they were doing, and I'm not going to screw with them. There's no way he could say that, right? There's no
Wow.
way he could
Hmm.
articulate that. It's just a feeling that you get. So when you have that confidence and you have the skills that you've proven under stress with unknown threats, unknown attacks, and you can handle yourself okay. There's no perfect anytime, but you can handle yourself okay in those situations. Believe it or not, you'll probably never have a chance to use it because the bad guys in life will will smell that on you and not want to put themselves in that situation. Like any predator, a predator doesn't want to get injured. They can't be a predator anymore if they're injured. It's just a survival mechanism. So that's super important. That's the confidence level and in training. And then I said there's also that overconfidence side, and not the overconfidence, but the command presence. And when you say calmness, there is a calmness that comes over you when a situation presents itself, but it's not an actual attack. You tend to calm down in that moment when you have a moment, because in your training you never had a moment. It was always somebody popping up behind you, choking you. It was always somebody pulling a gun out while you were talking to them. Your training was always these immediate violent attacks. And now here's this person in front of you that is indicating that they might be violent by their body language and their language and their speech and everything. They're indicating that there's a good chance this person is going into fight or flight themselves, and they may be violent or they may start running away from you. You tend to calm down because I've seen this before. I know how this goes, and I have a plan for my reactions, and I trust those reactions. One of our instructors, who happens to also be an officer, he's retired now. He came across this guy walking down the middle of the street, and the very start of his patrol shift. It was about 10:30 at night, I think. And he's no, yeah, it was 9:30 at night. He's walking down. This guy's walking down the middle of the street, and this officer pulls in behind him, and chirps his siren and gets on his loudspeaker and says, "Hey man, get off the road." And the guy just stops. And my buddy's like, "Oh God, all right, here we go." He gets out of the car and he goes, "Hey man, you have to get out of the road." And the guy turns around and he's got a big old knife in his hand. And he raises the knife up like this. He raises the knife up like he's going to charge my buddy. And this guy's, I saw the body camera footage. I don't know if I can say that on online, but anyway, I saw the body camera footage. It's public. And, and this guy's probably about 10 feet away. So he's got a decent reactionary gap. He's about 10 feet away, and this officer would have been fully justified to draw his weapon at that point, and maybe even justified at shooting this guy at 10 feet away. But he didn't. And the reason he did it, and by the way, this story is actually in one of the books that I wrote, The Modern Gunfighter. It's
Okay.
actually in kind of the prelude to The Modern Gunfighter. The reason he didn't draw his weapon is because he had seen this before, and he knew he had multiple options before his firearm, I should say. He knew he had de-escalation tactics. He knew he had kicks that could stop somebody from moving into him. He knew he had pepper spray. He knew he had good hand defenses against knives that he could use for a reaction to create space and then possibly draw his weapon if he needed to. He knew that he had other options before having to draw his weapon and utilize it. I'm not saying it's the best tactics for everybody, but there was that calmness that came over him because he
Wow.
knew he had options, and he had seen this very scenario 100 times in training.
Wow.
That's how important scenario training is. And that's how important training under stress is, and utilizing stress
Yeah.
inoculation training to get yourself to that place. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, very well
Okay.
so. And I'm just wondering, I know you've given us a ton of wonderful information around situational awareness, intentionally switch tasking, training under stress, and all of what's available through Krav Maga, the classes you teach on body awareness and situational awareness, things like that. Body language, I think, is what it
Yeah,
meant to say
yeah,
there.
the
Yeah.
seminar I teach is called Nonverbal Precursors to Violence. But it
Okay.
is
Okay.
it's a body language study on pre-attack indicators or pre-flight indicators.
Okay. Any of those you want to share for a couple briefly?
I will if you don't mind. I have to preface it though. There's a couple of
Okay.
things to remember. One is that any of these indicators or tells by themselves don't mean anything. You've been doing them all morning with
Okay.
me on camera, and I've been doing them all morning with you on camera. These single
Okay.
things, right? Any one thing is not an indicator. You have to first establish a baseline of behavior. And then you have to see these indicators coming in clusters and more unique indicators coming more rapidly, and seeing them leave the baseline before you can start to make a determination. And then again, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could mean they're going to run. It could mean they're going to attack. It could mean they're eventually going to calm themselves down. We can't tell you what it means. All we can tell you, and here's the important part before I give you some indicators, all it means is that there is likely a level of cortisol and adrenaline in their bloodstream that wasn't there before.
Mm.
That's what we're looking for. So don't take these indicators as things on an island by themselves. Understand that what you're looking for is the biological and physiological response to those two hormones. I call them drugs when I'm talking because it's easier to relate to people. But they're hormones, but they act like drugs. They have effects like drugs, and like any good drug, they have side effects, and those side effects are generally meant to keep you alive in an emergency. So now I'll give you a couple of those indicators. Um, now that you know why they're happening, right? So one of those indicators might be what we call subconscious limbering up, stretching before action. And that's pretty obvious. Why would your body subconsciously start stretching itself before a fight? Well, because if you're not warmed up, you're going to get injured, right? This is it's our subconscious brain knows that. So it might look something like just swinging my hands back and forth like this, stretching my back and my chest a lot, um, turning and craning my neck without turning my body. If I look this way and I look that way, it's not the look necessarily. There are things called target glances and exit glances, but it's more of the way I look. A car passes by while I'm talking to you, and instead of it catching my attention and my body and my head does this, it's this, and I look, but my body stays square to you. And my body would stay square to
Mhm.
you because our instinct under fight or flight is to square our body off and lower our center of gravity and brace for impact. That's what happens under stress. So if I'm starting to become stressed with cortisol and adrenaline, I don't want to. My subconscious brain won't let me turn my body necessarily if I perceive you as the threat. So I'll keep my body square to you, but I'll crane my neck. That could be a form of limbering up. Could also be an exit glance. Rapid blinking and
Mm.
forceful blinking. Our eyes tend to pre-tear. They pre-moisten themselves excessively before we get into a fight because we have to assume when we walked out of our cave back in the day, we walked out of our cave and we were taking our morning pee, and all of a sudden there's a saber-toothed tiger standing right there. These things will happen to us because we're about to get attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. But our brain goes, you know what? We're going to roll around in the dirt for a while. So let's make sure that our eyes stay dust free. Let's pre-tear our eyes. So excessive blinking and rapid blinking, like that, um, could be an indicator that they have excessive tears going. And of course, when you have excessive tears, you also sniff, like after you had a good cry. So subconscious limbering up, tearing, sniffing. And then this is a big one. It's called piloerection. It's just a fancy word for your hair standing up or goosebumps. The thing is that
Mm.
we have hair all over our bodies. So when our hair stands up and we start perspiring as well, which is another indicator, because perspiration helps keep our body cool in that fight, and it also makes us slippery. So we'll start to perspire, and we get piloerection. Piloerection increases the tactile sensitivity of our skin, so we can sense movement more sooner and closer around us, sooner and further away around us. So all of these things help us survive in a fight for our life. That's why they're happening to the body before somebody gets themselves up to attack, right? They work themselves up to it. They have cortisol and adrenaline hitting their bloodstream. And with piloerection, you'll see people messing with their hair. They'll mess with their
Mhm.
hat in the hair because when you sweat, your hair stands up. It's uncomfortable, so you mess with it. You touch your eyebrows. You pinch your nose because there's hairs in your nose and it becomes itchy. So you pinch your nose. You might touch your ear.
Mm.
You go to the mustache. Whether you have a visible one or not. There's hairs everywhere on us. There's hairs on the corners of your eyes, so they might become a little irritated. So you'll touch the corners of your eyes. Plus, you're tearing, and those tears dry up, and it leaves the little crystal, the white stuff, the goo behind all the minerals from your tears,
Mhm.
and that becomes uncomfortable. So you have to touch the corners of your eyes because of that as well. These things by themselves don't mean anything, but rapid blinking, sniffing, blinking, scratching my head, touching my eyebrows, going to my corners of my eyes, touching the corners of my mouth because my mouth is dry because digestion is not needed when I'm fighting a saber-toothed tiger. So it starts to dry up. So I touch that and I'm stretching out and I'm limbering up and I'm touching all these things. I'm pinching my nose and I'm sniffing and touching my ear. Look at me, I was just stretching my neck, right? All of these
Mm.
things, if they're happening in rapid succession, more and more, and they weren't happening before because you established a baseline, these could be indicators of a fight or flight situation. Here's the other thing, and this is really important, Danielle.
Okay.
You'll probably feel scared and you won't know why. If you feel scared, because your subconscious brain, by the way, when you were just watching me do all of those things, your subconscious brain, I guarantee, was starting to ping your conscious brain and saying that guys might be a threat. If we were in the same room, you would most likely start mimicking some of my behaviors. This happens all the time in my talks. I can be in front,
Wow.
I can be in a corporate office with 50 employees, and I'll start doing all these things. I did one recently with a group of about 75 people, and I was walking around the room and I was explaining these things, talking about them. But as I was talking about them, I was doing them consciously, purposefully. I was doing them, and it made people so uncomfortable. They all started doing the same things that I was doing because their subconscious brain goes, "Hey, that guy's in fight or flight. We should match him. We don't want to be caught off guard." And so
Wow.
when somebody's going into fight or flight in front of you, you may feel scared because your subconscious brain recognizes it way better than our conscious brain. The only thing I teach when I'm teaching that body language class is I teach people what they already know, just how to consciously label it. Subconsciously, they'll know that somebody's going into fight or flight because they'll start to feel it themselves if it's pretty obvious. But at a very low level, if you can start labeling these behaviors, then you can consciously make decisions to leave, create space, proactively put handcuffs on for a little while, whatever the case is. Maybe strap somebody down on the gurney or pram that didn't need to be strapped down before. Whatever the reason, whatever it is that you do, whatever action you take, it should be based on the fact that you're starting to recognize these clusters outside of a baseline, or you're starting to feel scared out of nowhere. And if you do, you should start to look for these behaviors so you can make a conscious decision. You can consciously say, yep, he wasn't acting like that before. She wasn't acting like that before. And now I'm seeing what looks like this person going into fight or flight, even on a low level. I need to begin my de-escalation tactics. I need to begin my proactive listening skills to try to calm this situation down, which is a whole topic in itself. De-escalation, right? It's a skill.
Yeah.
I have won every single fight. I have won every single one of them that I avoided. So by talking somebody down off the ledge, right? That's the best self
Nice.
defense. That's a whole different topic, but they all tie in together. Situational awareness with reading body language and then understanding how to de-escalate somebody proactively. Those things go together because if you're situationally aware, you have a plan, you have an action plan, you're reading somebody's body language, you know they're starting to go into fight or flight, you can begin your de-escalation tactics sooner instead of waiting for that person to be yelling and screaming. You can catch it beforehand. It's so much easier to calm somebody down before they're angry as
Yeah.
they're getting there.
Wow. Yeah, good point. Really just appreciating how much, so much of what you shared and the tips are line up with mindfulness and practicing mindfulness. And the benefit is being more present moment aware, more focused on the present moment experience, which offers more life satisfaction
For
anyway.
sure.
So
For sure.
just, yeah,
We're all going to
definitely a
get caught
huge
up. We're all going
connection.
to get caught up focusing on our phones or doing stuff. And don't,
Yeah,
you can't chastise yourself for doing that. That's part of life too. We're all going to be
that's
caught up
true.
in
Yeah,
other things. The trick is to know when to snap out of being caught up in that thing, right? And then when to
yeah,
be self-aware. And some of it, as you say, is just makes a better life. Some of it is like okay, I'm on the beach. I shouldn't be on my phone. I should be watching this sunset, right?
right.
Because you don't want to miss that.
Yeah,
So you're right. The same practice can carry over, be it an enjoyable experience or a self-protection experience. It can all carry over. But you can't be that self-aware 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
yeah,
right? It's exhausting. So you have to
absolutely.
allow yourself.
No, yes, I appreciate your the point you made around when you choose to practice it, like leaving your home, entering a new space, entering a new building, leaving your vehicle. Because I agree, you're right. Nobody can be mindfully aware 100% of the time. We don't have the attention span for
We
that.
don't.
So, very good. Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. So, James, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your time with us
My
today. I
pleasure.
really appreciate. Oh, wonderful. It's great to have you. Really appreciate your practical guidance about awareness, confidence, how we can all move through the world feeling more prepared and empowered. For listeners who want to learn more about James and his work, you can find him through Colorado Krav Maga, one of the leading self-defense training centers in the country. You can also explore the books that we mentioned, How to Be a Superhero and the Modern Gunfighter, and learn more about his trainings and presentations at wetrainsuperheroes.com.
Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to Take Care with the Rowing Therapist. If this conversation resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who could benefit from feeling a little more confident, prepared, and empowered in their daily life. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of everyone else.